Okay, thank you so much everyone for joining today, and thank you organizers for crafting such wonderful and thought through sessions. Myself, Preeti Godawat. I'm based out of Sydney. Currently, I'm leading the Web and Martech engineering initiatives in ResMed. When I started my career, I started as a .NET plus SQL developer. And that is where I had the interest in digital marketing, web technologies, and slowly converged towards MarTech. And that is where I had played around with a lot of offerings from or platforms from Salesforce. Marketing Cloud is especially closer to my expertise and heart because of all the power it gives to engage with the consumers, nurture the consumers. Today's session is more driven towards SQL. Before we get into this agenda, I would love to understand from the audience if you guys can probably just type into the chat or come off mute and speak up the expertise level or the maturity level in understanding of SQL. Do you consider yourself as beginner or intermediate or general in general for SQL, not really from Marketing Cloud perspective, in general from SQL, how do you rate your expertise? Okay, so many from, I would say from intermediate to advanced level. Not sure if there are any beginners. If there are, I can go a little bit from basics. But if it is all intermediate from intermediate to advanced level, let's keep it to, we can start from SQL and Marketing Cloud context. Today we'll be covering a little bit about what is SQL, SQL in Marketing Cloud context, some of the basics. Basics definitely not covering overall, again, in Marketing Cloud context. When we are starting to write our queries, first it is important to understand the data. That is something similar to when I believe a lot of you may have a developer background as well. It's something similar to when you start building your application, you need to understand the business context of it, what you are trying to build. Similar way, when you're writing your SQL query, you need to understand your data and your objective, what you want to derive out of it. Some use cases, how we can use it in the Marketing Cloud space, why we need to use it, and some of the, I believe in other sessions you already have covered or will be covering regarding Automation Studio. What we will be covering is how SQL can be helped in automating some of your reports or merging some of your data to drive some of your campaigns. And then some additional considerations, quick tips to keep in mind so that when we are writing any queries, we make sure that it is written with efficiency and it can perform well. I'll cover more what could be the context. But starting with SQL or SQL, structured query language, you can take it as like, what's a database? Database is simply a warehouse where you try to keep different type of files in different type of things in different containers. and you need SQL to get that information out. Now, if we try to go in Marketing Cloud context, one second, yeah, why SQL? In Marketing Cloud, you have data extensions, which I believe most of you might be aware of, and data views. These are the two things which are using relational database. And why we are using SQL is because it's the best way to work with relational databases. There are so many ways to write SQL queries. There are so many type of databases, but okay. One thing, I think somebody is on speaker, if you can mute. One thing is, at any point of time, please, if you have any questions, feel free to come off mute and ask. I would like this session to be really interactive. And I'll try to answer your questions to best of my capacity. Coming back to the point, SQL works, as I was mentioning, SQL works best with relational databases. So that is one language we can use with data extensions and data views. Now, if you think about it, Marketing Cloud is a platform as a service offered by Salesforce, which comes with a lot of extensive and good filters. Why not just use that? Why not just use the CLI to derive your data? The only constraint with out-of-the-box filters is it has limitation. If you want to join multiple data extensions or multiple data views to drive some information and maybe capture it into a target data set, that is where you need to use SQL queries, and it becomes very efficient if the query is written in an optimal way. It's an optimized query, then I believe data is not a constraint. Another point is, if you are writing any complex queries, let's say you have nested queries, or you may have multiple joins within the query, then while you are reporting the data or segmenting any audiences, SQL query becomes very, very convenient. You can use a lot of tools like Query Studio or any Microsoft provided platforms to write and structure your query and then use it within your Marketing Cloud setup to execute. Now, how? If I come to, one second, why is it not? Okay. So if I come to how, I would go with that famous saying, one ring to rule them all. In Marketing Cloud context, it is one SQL query to manage them all. It is as simple as select from your data extension fields, from your Marketing Cloud data sources, and join it with multiple data sources, as many as you want. If it is single one, then I believe you can work with direct custom or out-of-the-box filters. But joins is where the SQL plays a pivotal role in Marketing Cloud context, where pre-built filters are not enough, of course. And then there are so many use cases when you are driving your any automation, being it for reporting purpose, being it for data update purpose, being it for segmentation purpose, then your reporting queries within your intelligence report module, if you want to derive certain reports and schedule it to maybe your target stakeholders, that is where SQL can play a pivotal role. And then querying the data views, of course. Okay, very simple example for data filters is you have one source, one target, you can easily use data filters and it will work as a charm. You don't need SQL here. But another important one is when you want to consider multiple data views. Let's say I want to send email to all my subscribers who have received the email and at least opened once. That is where you will have multiple data views or data extensions to be considered. You can join them, write your SQL query, store the response in your target data extension, and then rest is what you always do within the Marketing Cloud instance. Now, understanding the data sources, we don't need to understand all. The two data sources which we will be covering is one, data views. There is a reference link here. Salesforce has very nicely documented all the available data views. Data views are pre-created queries to find information about your subscribers or find information about who has opened the email, who has, how many emails are sent, if there are any bounces. So all that information, all the tracking information is stored in data views. Of course, data views cannot be modified, and the data retention within data views is up to 6 months. Now, that being said, since there is such limitation, let's say that's why it is important to understand the business context or your use case. Let's say if you have a use case where you need to have a data longer than that duration, then what you may need to do is query, join these data views, and store your information back into your data extension, where you can potentially, okay, default is again 6 months, but you can potentially control this duration, how long you want to retain the data. 6 months is because, as you all may know, that tracking data grows very fast. You are sending maybe not millions of, but at least thousands of emails every month on an average, depending upon your business model or depending upon whatever campaigns you are driving. And imagine those emails being opened multiple times, multiple links being clicked, bounces, unsubscriptions. So data will grow for sure. So 6 months is a safe duration, after which, and usual consideration in digital marketing context is none of your campaigns run for that long. But if you have a special use case, then Marketing Cloud has this provision where you can query the data from data views and store it in a specific data extension, because you may not need all this data. You will need a subset of it. Coming to the next one, which is data extensions. This is a very important one because this is what you play around with. This is like placeholder for your data. When it is in the single BU, it is a normal data extension. When you create a data extension which has to be used across multiple BUs, it's a shared data extension. Usually when you create the shared data extension, I don't want to go into too much detail. I believe there might be some sessions which are covering all these data sources, but there are certain things which you should consider. Not every data extension should be created as shared. Before creating the data extension, definitely you should finalize your data source and the target. Whatever you want to capture, based on that, the data extension has to be created. If it is created in an optimal way, then it is easier to query on. It is easier to maintain. Retention policies, again, important. As I mentioned previously, by default, data is retained for 6 months. But using the retention policy, you can extend the validity. You can extend the time frame for which you want to retain your data. And these are in place. I think there are a couple of aspects. One is to make sure you have most recent and valid data for your sense. And second could be from the privacy perspective as well. It really helps if you, from my experience, I can say that it really helps if you have proper data retention policies in place, especially for like highly regulated industries like banking or healthcare, where you have to ensure that privacy per se, you are 100% compliant. these industries, you don't have much flexibility when it comes to PII or PHI data. Again, a very simple reference, article about what is data extension and how it works. Now let's begin. Now, since we understand what kind of data sources, any questions so far? Okay. Now, since we understand that how it is important, how SQL is important from the Marketing Cloud context, I believe we can start with SQL itself, structured query language. Okay, if I can move it forward. Okay, very simple start. Even if you are beginner to the SQL world, I think this is a very good place for you to start because you don't need to learn so many things. The complexity comes with the type of statements in SQL where you have insert, update, delete, different type of functions. Those are few things which are not supported by Marketing Cloud. Why? Reason being, when you write these queries or execute, they use, Salesforce use their backend query system to execute these queries. If you have insert, update, or delete command, and any join goes wrong, or any where condition goes missing or wrong, you can imagine the impact. So from that perspective, they don't like to give a non-breakable, fully functional kind of environment where the mistakes are not very expensive. Marketing Cloud only supports the select statements. Now, simplest way to understand how to write SQL, as I saw there are few beginners in the group as well, is select the data which you want to use. Okay, usually if you think about general SQL, you can just write select star, which actually selects literally everything from your whatever tables you join or whatever you want to retrieve. And then you can pick and choose what fields you want to use. In Marketing Cloud world, one difference is it's good to understand what you want to capture. Because even before writing your SQL query, you will probably write a data extension where you want to store it. You will create a data extension where you want to store it. Now, that data extension, once you create it, that means you will know what fields. So those are the things which should come in your select query. So this place will be replaced with all the data points which you want to capture or select from the location where the data is stored, usually in data extensions and data views, join with additional location using common data points. I will explain the common data points in little bit detail later on, but what you have to do is, let's say if you want to, I want to be friends with my friend's friends. So my friend is the common data point. I cannot be friends with more people or with their friends if I don't have that common data point. So common connection. So from that perspective, same thing is applicable in SQL world, where you need to have that common data point, which comes as, if I say in technical terms, primary or primary key or foreign key, and then write your where condition. If you are talking about other queries like insert, update, or delete, usual practice or the best practice or what I always recommend is write your where conditions first. But in select world, it's okay if you have not thought through or if you haven't written your where condition. Could be a little bit of harm depending upon what size your data is when you are executing. But the harm is not that big. But before you run it, to populate your data extension, it's good to always check if your where conditions are properly crafted or not, because you don't want to retrieve a million records when your target audience is just at 10,000. So that's what where condition does. It will filter out the records for you and give you only the things which are necessary. Any questions here? Okay, moving forward. Now we saw select from join. Let's talk about join more because joins are very critical. You can't just simply join tables without understanding them. You have to go beyond, when you want to go beyond the simple data views or data extensions. The only reason why we are trying to understand SQL here is because you cannot achieve what you are trying to do with simple filters. That is where the SQL comes into picture. In marketing cloud context, of course, but SQL is a very, very important component, and it can be useful in your other business aspects also, whatever be your role, being it marketing cloud expert, being it digital marketing expert. I'm not sure what all profiles are there in this target audience, but whatever it is, business analyst, business managers, data analyst, SQL plays a pivotal role. SQL helps you retrieve the data where the data grows really high. You all may have faced that problem in your initial career phase where Excel is not enough. You are not being able to process the data in Excel. You are not being able to do certain VLOOKUPs or certain data mapping within Excel. That is where SQL databases plays a very good role, and SQL becomes important. Now, SQL is not just select query. You have to join multiple databases. That is where the power of SQL comes into the play. Mainly 4 types of joins: left join, right join, inner join, and full outer join. Now, whatever comes beyond this can be controlled with a where condition. Let's say if I consider this left join, I don't want to have this data. I want to have some information, but I only want to have this data. With knowing that, okay, I only want to have the people who have not purchased anything, but I don't want to have people who have all the audience who have purchased something. So then in that case, you will put a where condition and just say that where in orders table or whatever your left join table that is having your foreign key as null. That will give you a subset of this as well. So mainly 4 type of join. And after that, whatever you do can be controlled by your where conditions. Now, one quick tip is if you're using left join, I would recommend try to maintain that as a practice. Don't use a combination of left and right join. That makes query little bit, there is no wrong and right in that, but it makes query little bit more unreadable. It will be more readable if you use similar type of join. You can definitely use a combination of left join and inner join, or left join or inner join or full outer join. But out of left and right join, you should try to maintain just one type of join within one query. I would say within your ecosystem, because the thing is, it's the person who writes the query, it's very easy for him or her to read the query. It is more important that your subordinates or your colleagues or your predecessors who are planning to pick up some of your work should be able to read as well. So from that perspective, it's good to maintain some hygiene there. One simple example could be just pick one data extension, left join with data extension B, and on data extension A dot field, data extension B dot field. Why I said field in both the places? Because this is my common data point, as we saw earlier. When you are joining 2 queries, it need to have that common data point when you are using these type of joins. Now, there is something called cross join as well. That comes into play when you don't have a common data point. But I would say, from my experience, it is hardly used. You don't use cross join very often. Very rarely, if you have although it is a relational database, but data is extremely unstructured where you don't have proper keys defined. That is where cross join comes into the picture. That's why I didn't cover it here. In most of the cases, you should not try to use, you should prefer left join, right join, or inner join when you want to take something which is applicable for both your data points, or full outer join when you want to capture literally everything. Okay, after the joins comes the where condition. Where conditions are, any questions on the joins? Okay, perfect. I think we can move ahead. Where conditions. Where conditions, I think let's start with just the basic operators. Where condition can be as simple as select everything from my subscribers where my bounce rate is less than 0, or my bounce rate is greater than 0, or my opens are greater than 0. So I only want to send it to the subscriber who are a little bit more engaging, to see the performance, like to make sure that, or my open rate equal to 0. In that case, you are sending it to the people who have not read through your previous campaign or previous email. So some of these mathematical operators are important from that context. Now, let's say if you want to, so these work in exact scenarios where you want to send it to where, okay, select all the subscriber where my last send date is greater than or less than the date before previous 3 months. So from that perspective, you're not sending an email to a customer who you have already sent in, like within this last 3 months. Now, there is something called like. That comes into play when you want to have, you don't know the exact context. You don't know what's my, one simple scenario in Marketing Cloud context can be, let's say you have a lot of record types within your instance for Singapore. And every record type, although there are different record types, but it contains a keyword called SG. So you can write a simple like operator where my record type is like SG, but when you have to make sure that you know whether it is coming in between or in the beginning as a prefix or as a suffix. Because why you need to know is because wherever it comes, let's say if it comes as prefix, then your query will become like quote SG percentage sign quote again, which means it will pick up everything where SG is a prefix, but trailing can be anything. Now, if you don't know whether it is a prefix or suffix it's coming in between, then you have to put the percentage sign at both the places. That will give you, I usually try to avoid that situation, because then a word can contain SG also, which is not very common. Like if I would say AU also. AU is common to have together. SG is not so common to have together, but it's important to make sure that you know your data before you're writing your where conditions as well. Then there is something called logical operators. We need to use logical operators, or we usually use logical operators where we have multiple where conditions. I want to have customers who have opened their emails and their status is active. They are not unsubscribed. I want to send email. So that is an AND operator, or is where they have opened their emails or they have 0 cents. I have never sent an email to them. That could be an OR operator where you are picking every customer who you have never communicated, who's new maybe, or the customers who have actually opened your email. So you are sending it to new as well as the most engaging customers. You are picking that data. Now, there is something called between. Between is little tricky when it comes to the dates. between, you can take it as a range. So basically, select all the consumers where the date of birth is between 1985 to 2000. It will not include the only tricky part from between is it does not include the borderline conditions. I'll take a date example. So if you say select everything from your subscribers where event date or the date you have sent them anything is between today and pick a date which is 6 months ago. Now what happens is it will take the date which was 6 months ago, but it will not include today unless you are mentioning the time as 23:59:59. Because by default, it takes 000. So that is something which is tricky for between. One, if you are too confused, one alternate rather than using between can be your greater than equal to or less than equal to operator, which you can use with the and or a or. In case of between, it will be with the and. Now there is something called in and not in. Why we need in and not in if you have or condition? So I can simply say where my subscriber ID equal to 1 or subscriber ID equal to 2. It sounds good when you have just 2. Now imagine if you have 5. It makes your query literally not readable. And it is less efficient in execution also. There is something called query optimization. From that perspective, in works better when you have multiple ORs or multiple data points to be considered. So you can simply write as where my subscriber ID in bracket 1, 2. So it will pick up both. Now, again, one consideration when you are writing in is, let's say if, although I'm not sure if you will face it very frequently in Marketing Cloud, but good to know. Let's say if you want to check on too many records, your manager or whoever is giving you this work has told you that, okay, I want you to check where the subscriber ID is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, blah, 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 up to 500. Then in may not be very efficient. So what you may need to do is greater than less than. So you have to tweak your where conditions according to the situation. There is no one rule which can fit all, but there are certain best practices. So you have to gauge, okay, only these many conditions, and you cannot, it's not in a sequence, then you have to use in. There are one good example or one best example which I always use when I'm using inquiries is nested select queries. So let's say if you have selected subscriber with open rate and then you want to use it as a nest, you want to write an outer query for it for those subscriber using some other data extension for those subscriber IDs. So that is where the in can play a very good role for you. And counter to that is not in. So I don't want the subscribers who have opened the emails, or I don't want subscribers where the ID in 1 or 2. It will give all except subscriber ID 1 or 2. These are few basic operators which come really handy when you are writing your where conditions. Any questions so far? Okay, moving ahead. Last but not the least, from SQL context is the built-in functions. Although Marketing Cloud SQL does not support the custom functions, the functions which you can, some of the people who mentioned that they are on the intermediate state for SQL understanding. I think one thing they may have used very extensively is custom functions, which you can write in SQL, user-defined functions or user-defined tables. Those are the things which are not supported in Marketing Cloud. You can only write standard select queries, but built-in functions are there. Built-in functions comes really handy when you are writing your queries with certain where conditions, or you are trying to get a count. Let's say you want to do a personalization for your email where you want to see how many product a particular customer or buyer or subscriber has bought. So that is where your count or sum, these are some of the mathematical operators. These mathematical, not operators, functions, these comes really handy. Then it is something like minimum or maximum. I want to select customers, a customer who is having maximum, I don't know, spend or maximum benefit for me, like who has bought a lot from me. So use cases may vary, but the context is that is where you can use these inbuilt operator functions. Then there is something called cast or convert. This is one which comes really handy and solves a lot of problem. Like especially let's say if you are writing a where condition where you want to cast your data is not very clean. There are few decimal places, or there are few, you didn't control the number of decimal places. You can cast it using, you can simply Google cast and convert in SQL context. You'll get all the formatting. The best part about Marketing Cloud is they use SQL Server 2016 standards. So from that perspective, whatever you will find for these functions which are supported by Marketing Cloud will be still applicable. Most of it is still applicable. At times you may face some issues, then that is where you have to like go for a specific search or try to read some of the references which I have shared earlier, where we are the Salesforce itself has defined certain aspect how you can use it. Convert, cast, both work in that particular context. It is specifically useful for date formats because your date might be stored in YYMMDD, which is a very standard SQL format. But when you send your email for personalization perspective, you don't want to send it in that format. What you can do is when you are retrieving your final data, you can format it in the way your target audience understands, which varies for each country. That's why I said your target audience understands. And then your personalization goes smoothly. Now, moving ahead, aggregation. This is very important, specifically from deduplication perspective, because when you are doing multiple joins, it is quite common and mostly it's not possible to have it always unique records, because one customer, I'm taking the person and the order reference because that is the most common one to understand. If you need other references, please do let me know. Come off the mute and let me know. I can try to cook up more references for you. But going with that reference, a subscriber bought something on your eShop. It can be done multiple times. Now, when you're doing this query, if you don't do the distinct, you have to do it at some point of time while sending out the campaign or doing something else. It's good to, so that your data extension is clean when you are setting up a new one. It's good to have that aggregation within your query itself. Again, it depends on your context. Let's say if you want to send out the product information, then it's important for you to have that product information, and then it may have certain duplicate records as well. But good to do the group by, because if the same product is bought by the same customer multiple times, with group by, you will get again the unique of, because you don't want to tell me that Preeti, you have bought product A, product A, product A, product A. I have bought product A. How many times? It does not matter. Group by or distinct helps you doing that. Now there is something called having. Having is particularly useful in your where condition context. It at times optimize your query. Like it could be you select everything where blah, 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 and records are having this. You go by your normal English term and you will understand why having is important. Not used very extensively, but again, it is good to have. Count. Count is normal. Like you want to give me, I have bought product A, and the count, how many times I have bought, 5 times. So count of SKU will give me the number of times I have bought that product. Now, let me just quickly disable my notifications. Yep. So that's aggregation. Then there is something very critical from the database perspective, which is handling the nulls. It is something which you cannot avoid. Your data, specifically when you are joining, your data is bound to have null. SQL have few inbuilt functions which are luckily supported by Marketing Cloud also, using which you can handle your null, where a certain thing is null. Let's say I don't want to send emails to a customer who has not bought anything or not bought a certain product. Then you can put your where condition accordingly and is null. So and this comes really handy when you are joining multiple tables, or you want to send it to only people who have bought this and done this, or you don't want to send it to people who don't have a phone number because your follow-up nurturing journey has a sequence of SMS. So where SMS or mobile number is not null. Then there is something called null if. It's a very good function. I discovered this much later. It was not there before, but it comes really handy. What it does is, at times when I can't cook up an example for you, but at times when you're writing your query, you want to avoid certain words. So you can just write null if, your column name and comma, your keyword. So if that keyword appears, it will change the value to null. And then you can use is null or is not null to if null to standardize or replace that that thing. Then there is something called coalesce that is also used for null context, where one very good example. Let's say you have shipping address and billing address, and you don't know if some of these are null, or shipping address, billing address, home address, office address. You want to pick up something which is not null. What coalesce does is, whatever you define within the brackets after coalesce, it will pick up the first one based on your definition on the priority. You should define it in the priority, like my billing address is priority, then my shipping address, then my office address. So what it will do is, if your billing address is null, then it will pick up your shipping address. If that is null, then it will pick up your office address. If everything is null, then of course it will return null. So from that context, why I take that example is, again, it could be applicable from your Marketing Cloud context, where you want to send out to people, like offer is applicable only for people in certain areas. So you want to make sure that you pick the right address and then run that offer. Now, again, last but not the least, basic string and date functions. Something like length, concatenate. Concat is concatenate in Excel. So in Marketing SQL, it is concat, where you want to concat certain strings. Character index, where you want to find out, like, remember the ST example, you want to find out the character index for that and then do the processing. That can be done using character index. Get date and open bracket, close bracket, that will give you the date for today. Date add, date def. This is an important one. Date add is something like you want to add 3 days or 3 months before or after. You can just add negative or positive 3 and do the date add to get a future or past date. Date def is, again, works in similar fashion. Basically, these are very few examples which I pick and choose based on how commonly they are used. These are the most popular ones. Again, some and all can be are also popular. You can use that as well, but it's huge. I mean, covering all the built-in functions will take, I think, a couple of more hours. But what you should do is, ideally, when you are stuck with a problem that, oh, I don't know how to process this data anymore, that is where you have to identify what function, and you can relate it in such a way that, okay, what would I do if it is in normal SQL? What would I do if it is in Excel? And fortunately, SQL uses functions very closely with whatever is defined in Excel as well. Ltrim, rtrim, to trim your content. That is important from personalization perspective. So all that comes really handy. There are certain W3 references which list all these functions very nicely, but try to make sure that you are picking up in SQL Server 2016 context, so that most of it will be still applicable for your marketing cloud as well. That was a big one. Any questions so far? Okay, that's good. Let's move ahead. Now, setting up the stage. How? Let's try to understand with some data. This is your users table. I just randomly picked some user IDs. You know how you do the data entry, right? Just key in some numbers, make sure that it is, only thing I made sure is it's not repeated, so that it does not look like garbage, but it is just randomly typed numbers, user IDs and names for users. Now orders, where your same user may have placed multiple orders, and order total. For the first order, they bought something worth $100. For the second order, they bought something $150. And then order items, because within same order, they may have bought multiple things, or maybe single thing with various quantity. It's important to understand your data so that when you write the query, you write it optimally. With this data, however you write, it will work. But your data is not this. Your data is much bigger than this. You will have thousands, 10,000s, or lakhs of records. So from that perspective, it is important that you understand your data. One thing which is very, very important is understanding your data fields. This is my primary key. So when I am picking up the orders, you have to make sure that you know if your table has a primary key. Usually it should. It's good practice to have a primary key there. But if it is not having a primary key, then you need to make sure that you understand the unique identifier. It could be a GUID, which is linking, your user ID is your GUID, the name, then your orders table should have that GUID, but still will have primary key. It may not be an integer, but it will have a primary key. Now, you can see this is primary key here, which is your order ID. I don't know if you can see my cursor. This is again a primary key, but for the users table. So every table will have its own primary key. For order items, your item ID is your primary key. And if I see this, oh, my user ID is repeating here. So this is also primary key? No, this is the foreign key, because it's the primary key for your users table. If you see here, although it is a primary key for some other table, it is repeated here. Your primary key is your unique identifier for that record. It will always be unique. It cannot be repeated if it is the primary key. Foreign key can be repeated. It is a primary key for some other table, but in orders table context, it is a reference to users table. That's why it is a foreign key. Now, if you recall, when we were talking about joins, we were talking about common identifier. User ID is your common identifier because it is there in users table, it is there in orders table. So if you want to understand which order is placed by which user for what amount, that is where the primary key and foreign key will play a role. So this is your data. I hope you all understood the data. It depends. Thanks, Lakshmi. Who will do this data modeling? Mostly, yes, your business analyst, your database administrator, they will do the data modeling for you. But in some context, you may need it. That's why it is important for you to understand this, because in some context, you may need to do the data modeling as well. When you are trying to, a very simple or common example can be, let's say if you are trying to build a custom report, although there are a lot of reports available in Marketing Cloud, but a simple example is, let's say if you're trying to build a report using your data views, then you need to understand the link which I gave you, which I pasted in my previous slides. Sorry, I didn't give you, which I pasted in my previous slides, where Salesforce is actually referring to all the possible data views. They have documented it very nicely, and they have actually helped to identify what are your primary keys, because they will say that it is a unique identifier. So to a certain extent, they have done that data modeling for you, but it's important for you to understand it as well, because when you are creating your own data extensions, which you may use in future for creating a new data extension, so that data modeling, at some point of time, you play that role as well. You have to do that data modeling too. Okay, moving ahead. Thanks, Shruti. Any questions here, understanding the data? I think this data is quite clear, very, very easy example. If you have any questions, happy to answer. Okay, moving ahead. Simple use case. Select people who have bought something. Now your data is this. You have users, you have orders in a separate table, you have order items in a separate table. The best part about it is structured data. When it is structured data, your SQL does the magic. You can use SQL to query this data. Now, your simple question is, select people who have bought something. How do we understand who have bought something? Now, let me just hide this. Okay, if you see this, Rob, Kevin, Albert, Jessica, Henry, David, and Lisa, you have 7 people and you have 8 orders. But if you try to see the data visually, not everyone has bought something. Now, visually, you can pick up who have bought something when it is 8 and 7 records. Now you have to play with hundreds, millions, trillions of records. You cannot pick it up visually. SQL plays a very important role in that case. Select user ID and name, because your question was saying to select people from users. Now, question is not asking select all the people and the order information. It is asking select people who have bought something. So in that context, you have to use inner join. Remember where the inner join plays the role, where you want to pick something from both the tables, where record exists in both the tables. The common factor exists in both the tables. So see, user.user ID, that is your common factor. Orders.user ID, again the common factor. Yes, inner join on user ID, because in orders table, user ID is your foreign key, remember? So that's where you inner join on the user ID. Now, what will this do? Okay, let's forget about the group by. If you forget about the group by, what it will do is, with that join, it will give you maybe Rob, it will give you Albert, it will give you Jessica, David and Lisa. But if you see this, let's take Lisa's example. Lisa will come twice. How do you handle that? You can handle that with group by. Because what group by will do is it will aggregate. It will give you the unique records. Now, when you do group by, it is important. Yeah. Oh, so sorry. I didn't read your question, but I think I answered your question. It's important to see what fields you are using on group by. There is one limitation on group by. You cannot group by only few fields. You have to use all. Usually when you're doing aggregation, let's say in this example itself, you want to have a count of something. That is where the group by will, there are certain ways to do it. I usually prefer group by because it's more efficient, but you can do distinct also in this case. The distinct, why I said efficient is because the distinct may have some issues or may have performance issues, specifically when your fields are not indexed. If your fields are indexed, let's say user ID, it is indexed. In that case, you because it's the primary key, remember? So in that case, you can use distinct, no problem. But if these are not indexed, you're using UUID or something which is not indexed, in that case, you need to use group by. That will give you the unique records very efficiently, something like this. So it will give me Rob, Albert, Jessica, David, and Lisa. And if you notice, Lisa and Jessica, who were having multiple orders, didn't appear, or Rob or Lisa, who were having multiple orders, didn't appear multiple times, because using group by, you have actually found the unique subset. And the unique subset is on the combination of user ID and name. It's not the unique subset with all the fields. Distinct will give you the unique subset on all the fields. Any questions here? Okay, let's do one more use case. Select people who have bought not something, more than 3 items. Okay, that is where your, I didn't thought about this, that I have to go multiple times back. You have to know the quantity. This data, I can read the quantity, add, and know who will be my users who have bought more than 3 items. But again, consider the actual database where you will have thousands of transactions. That is something which you cannot do with your naked eyes. So from that perspective, let's try to understand the query in that case as well. Select user ID and name from users, inner join orders. Again, inner join on these fields because user ID is the primary key for users, but foreign key for orders. That's why we use this. And order ID is primary key for orders, but it is the foreign key for order items. So we use that common factor to do the inner join. Why we did the order join? Because we didn't want to select everything. We wanted to select only the people who have bought something, but more than 3 items. Now, this is very similar to our previous query. What if we execute this? If you execute this, you will get this. Let me just move this zoom bar. If you execute this, you will see this because we didn't take care of more than 3 items condition. We only selected everything. Now, if you move forward, you need a where condition. Where, again, a inbuilt function. Remember, sum is again an inbuilt function. Sure, the previous query is it? I can do that. This is the previous query. What I can, I'm not sure, maybe organizers will be able to help advise. What I can do is I can share the slides with the organizers if they can share it further with the broader audience. I think that would help. So this is your previous query. Now, if I move ahead, where we were trying to find people who have bought more than 3 items. So this query will give you everything similar to your previous one, but with quantity, and where sum of quantity is greater than 3. You put it, sorry, this quantity won't appear here unless you put a comma and sum of quantity here. If you put that, then this quantity will appear. But again, the message here is this where condition, where sum of quantity is greater than 3. And if it is greater than 3, which means your Lisa and Albert is out of the list, you will only get Rob, Jessica, and David. And this is your target segment where you can send out any of your marketing campaign. So I think now it must be a little bit more clear for the audience on where this plays a important role. Now, if we would have thought about, I want list of customers, but it does not, but I want list of everyone. It does not matter how many times they have bought or they have bought something or not, because I want to send them a promotion. It's a personalized promotion. I'm just cooking up some example. Personalized promotion in the sense that, okay, if they have bought something, then in subsequent purchases, they will get a 20% discount. If they have not bought anything ever from my store, they will get only 10% discount. So that is where your inner join will change to your left join. If you do the left join, what it will do is it will give you all the records for all the customers you have. Some of the customers will have the quantity as 0. If you don't handle null, it will be null. Sum of quantity, it's not count. Reason being, if you see your, thanks for that comment, Lakshmi and Gaurav. But if you see your data, let me just quickly go back here. If you see your data, why it is not count is because at times this person has bought this as quantity 3. That's why you need sum. You don't need count. If it is always like, if you only need to know number of transactions, then it will be count. But if you want to know how many products or items they have bought, then it will be sum, because quantity may vary. I can buy same item with 2 quantity, or I can buy same item 2 times. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. Now, since we had some examples here, let's try something. Can you do one thing? Maybe, I don't know how we can share, but maybe just write a very simple query. Write a SQL query to identify the subscribers who either unsubscribed or had an email bounced. If you don't know the data views yet, just use the underscore subscriber, which is your subscriber where you can, that's why I put some tips here. You can use underscore subscriber. That's the data view where you can find or query all the subscribers. And you can just simply, don't refer to the data view or try to Google. You can simply refer it as unsubscribed as unsubscribed, email bounced as bounced. Can you try something? Maybe let me give you guys a couple of minutes. You can try and maybe post it in the chat if just want to do an attempt, and then we can read the queries together. See, why I kept it in this way is because SQL is like mathematics. More you do, more you understand. And you cannot learn SQL by watching a video or just by listening to me. When you write the query, then you will understand the query. And as much as you write, you will, like a person like me who loves data, SQL is like something which I can literally read every day. But if you understand your data very well and want to analyze it or want to do something out of it, or want to use, as I was mentioning earlier, like SQL is very useful irrespective of your role, whether you are a developer or you are a manager or you are a CTO, you will still use SQL at some point of time. And it comes really handy when you are handling a lot of data. And 90% of the case, you will never handle 10 records. You will always handle the records in number of at least millions. Let's have 2 more minutes and see if somebody can attempt. There is no right or wrong. It's only trying. Once you try, you will understand the query more. And SQL is such that you always, like, select query is one place where you can afford to make mistake. See, not bad. That's amazing. Anita, Sandhya, Gaurav, very, very good job. Excellent job, everyone. Moving ahead then. Thank you. Again, if you want to see, this is what I did. Something similar to what you guys have done. Status is unsubscribed, or you can say unsubscribed equal to true, or bounce count is greater than 0, or you can say status equal to bounced if you are keeping bounce in the status. Usually, you won't keep bounce in the status because it could be a soft bounce, may not be a hard bounce. Good to keep it in a separate field from the data understanding point of view, but the query is correct. It could be, it's just identifying either or these two status. Let's try one more. Little bit complicated this time, not much. Write a SQL query for time frame of last 1 year, maybe. I think I changed this question to list email addresses because I can't give you 1 year. Okay. Again, going back to our understanding before, data views retain the data for 6 months. Let's take the time frame of year to date, which is hardly 3 months. Email address and number of emails sent to the subscribers who have received more than 3 emails and is opted in, which is subscribed. Now, quick tip, you should use data views underscore subscribers where all the subscribers are there, and underscore sent because you wanted to have where sent is more than 3 emails. So you need to have that sent information. Oh, I defined it here. So again, within current calendar year, list of email addresses and number of emails sent for subscribers who have received more than 3 emails and are opted in within current calendar year. If you have, in the decks itself, I have kept my LinkedIn profile link as well. If you have any doubts or want to understand more, please feel free to reach out. Or you can consolidate your questions and share it via organizers. I'll try to answer it over the email as well. Let's give it a couple of more seconds. Ah, there you go. I have received the first one from Meet. Yeah, that's a good use of having Meet. Okay, let me please share this. Again, select subscriber key, email address, count of sent emails from subscribers, left out to join sent. Why left out to join? Because I wanted all the subscribers. On subscribers.subscriber ID, again, my common identifier. And since it is within calendar year, you can simply say year of event date equal to year of get date. And count of sent subscriber is greater than 3. Now, if you want to avoid the duplicates, again, same thing. Since there is a count here, you can group by the subscriber key and email address. So some very, very simple examples. Your queries may be having many, many more fields and might be having few more complexities based on how your business unit is set up or how your data is set up, what are your sources you are considering. But it is always covered within this select, from, join, where, and some of the aggregators. Okay, coming to the, I think, last topic for the day, where we want to cover some additional considerations that is very important to keep in mind when you are writing any of your queries. Optimization. Query optimization is the key, because Marketing Cloud has this auto kill feature, which automatically stops your query if the execution time exceeds 30 minutes. Although 30 minutes is a very significant time, but when your data grows, if your joins are not correct, if you are doing your where condition is not correct, you are joining on a field which is not indexed, which is having too much of data. Let's say your custom fields, which is like 255 characters, right? That is something which you cannot index. And if you join on those fields for the data where the volume is in millions, that is where it may take a very long time. Why it is important to consider is because it's not just the query you are writing for the reporting use. It is also the queries which you are using for automation. And when you are using the queries for automation, usually nobody goes in and checks it every second day. Once you write it, you monitor it for maybe a week or two, maybe for a month, if it is an important one. And if it is working for a month without any issues, normal assumption is, oh, it will always work. That's why. And data growth, again, you don't know how much your data is growing. Very simple example is if you are in Christmas or New Year sale, that time people market a lot. They will send out a lot of campaigns, or it's your Easter sale. Your volume of send itself is huge. Now you imagine multiplying it maybe 10x, because it will have your opens, your bounces, your clicks. And if you are utilizing that kind of data, then of course you can imagine the data volume. Now that's a very simple example, but in the real life scenario, it can be consider the data for Amazon. How many consumers are there for, how many customers are there for Amazon? We can't even think about it. It's the volume is too big. That's why it is important to write your query optimally. Make sure you're joining, it's best to join on foreign key and primary key. If you don't have such, if you have only unique identifiers, which are not, or normal identifiers also, not the unique ones, you can, but these are common between two tables for sure. That is the condition to join, else you have to use cross join. If you are doing that, still okay, not a problem. But if your data grows, then it may land in a problem. So that's why planning that data correctly and writing the query with thanks for the question, Lakshmi. Sorry, I stopped in between because I got the message notification. But see, a very simple way to know whether you have retrieved the correct record set or you have written the query correctly is by analyzing the sample size. When you are dealing with thousands of records, you cannot verify each and every record to make sure that you are picking up the data correctly. But what you can do is in SQL world, when you are writing, see, once you start writing the queries, first 2, 3, 4 queries, 5 queries, what you should do ideally is, what I used to do when I initially started my career was I used to just create temporary tables within SQL world and then query on those, because I already know the data for those tables. I have inserted the data. And when I write the query for them, I know I'm retrieving the correct records because I understand that data. That's where the data modeling also comes into the play, because you have modeled that data. It's easy for you to verify. That is only for practice. Now, from marketing cloud context, what you can do to be 100% sure is try to do a little bit of sampling. Make sure, at times what we also do is, when we are writing the query, we write an additional where condition to pick up all the emails with our brand, our RESTMate domain, brand domain. It's not tedious, because if you are analyzing the sample, then it is very easy. But if you try to analyze thousands of records, then it is very tedious. So best way is do the sampling, analyze it for your initial few queries. And once you are comfortable writing queries, when you read the query, you read your business case. I think I'll just go to our previous slide. The easiest way to understand whether your query is correct is you read your business case and at the same time you read your query. If both resonates, 80% of the time it is correct. If it is not resonating, read your query again twice. and then maybe go for sampling if you're still not sure. So that could be one very easy solution. Okay, so again, optimizing the query. So if execution time exceeds 30 minutes, it will go into auto kill and you won't realize that your automation has stopped already, or automation has gone into error. So from that perspective, if your automation is doing some sort of data segmentation or some sort of reporting, then you will have issues, although you will know as soon as you will stop receiving those reports which are driven by this automation. But still, it is important to be careful, understand your data, make sure you know the common data points, make sure you know the fields you are using for your join. See, the most important part in the query optimization is your joins and your where condition. If these fields, if you are using the fields you are using in joins and where condition are indexed, and these are some sort of unique identifier out of the two tables you are joining, then I think you are safe. It will not hit 30 minutes. But if that is not the case, then you have to make sure that you are trying to read and trying to optimize your query correctly. Now, again, this situation will happen when you have more records. If it is working today, that does not mean it will work after 1 year also. Because, and this I have seen in real life examples also. Did the project, e-commerce setup, entire team was super excited, let's go live. As soon as they import the data, most of the search functions are not working. Because in e-commerce, search function is the most used one, it is the most critical one, and it has to scan on all the SKUs which are there in your e-commerce store. And it is not a normal search, it is a like search. So when you are using like in your where condition, usually the performance is lesser than equal to. That's why it is important to pick up your operators correctly. But in case of search, you cannot use equal to, you have to use like, because at times people don't know the full product name. Not at times, most of the times. So that's why it is important for you to have that like search capability. But see, one way to mitigate that is when you're doing like search, make sure those records are having index. So that's a real life example which I have seen. But the bottom line is, if it is working today, that does not mean it will work after a year. So that's why the query optimization is very, very important. In marketing cloud context, you can take the reference of tracking data. Even if you are not doing the like search on SKUs, you may be doing the like search on your record type. So from that perspective, it is important to consider your data volume today, project the growth, understand from your business when you're writing these queries. See, being in marketing cloud space is a very, very critical as well as sweet spot. Because when you are doing any nurturing journeys or you're designing any automation from your marketing cloud, you have to understand your business. Go back to your managers, go back to your business stakeholders and try to understand from them why you are doing this. What are the projections? Are you projecting Amazon-like of growth? Or are you projecting, oh, it's a very niche market, may not grow to that extent? Then you have a little bit of leeway. But when you know the growth, then you can plan for it. So don't just go by that, okay, it's working today, it will work tomorrow. Another good one is, as I was telling Lakshmi as well, start writing the query in SQL interfaces or Query Studio if you're not very confident on what your query should be. That will help you give some sort of confidence that, okay, and there are a lot of sample databases available on our best friend, Google. You Google, you'll find some sample databases. You can just import those, or you can just write few in Excel as a dummy import it in your SQL Server, local instance, or whatever you have handy. It could be SQL Server, it could be SQLite, it could be MySQL, whatever is handy or easily available, use that and write the queries there. More you practice, more you will know that, okay, your query is correct. There was something called Query Studio. I was trying to explore and see if I can get the Query Studio, but the company who has built the Query Studio is having some problems, and it's usually, if it is built by a third party, it's not supported by a Salesforce support team. So you have to go back to them to see if you can install Query Studio. If you already have installed one, maybe you can use it. And that is one good way, because why I like that tool is because I have seen that in past. I haven't used it recently in a couple of years. But one good thing about that Query Studio is when you write the query in that Query Studio, you can validate it, whether the query is running correctly. If the joins are incorrect, you will get an error. But if the joins are correct, then you are 90% safe that, okay, I can put this query in Automation Studio. So that is another good way to write it. Now, one last tip in this context, order of operations. That is very important. As you may have, okay, one second, there is, see, another one. MC snippet is available for SQL queries also, if not having MC org access. So see, there are many available which you can use. Thank you so much for sharing, Lakshmi. It's a good one, and maybe I can take a note also for my team. Now, last but not the least in this section is order of operations. It's important for you to understand how it is executed when you are writing the SQL query. It will first take from where they have to pick up the records. Then it will execute the where condition. Usually that's the order you write as well. It will execute the where condition, where blah, blah, blah conditions are met. Then it will group by, which you may have seen in one of the query example, because I guess, what was it? Meet has written it separately where he was using having. So what you can do is you can group by, and then you can write having count as greater than 3. And then once you execute till there, then the distinct is applied. That's why I prefer group by, because it actually filters out the data pretty quickly rather than waiting till the distinct. And then last but not least is order by. Once you have your data set, after applying all these operations, where you select from, what conditions you filter on, how you group by, if you have any having conditions, you want to filter, after grouping by, you want to further filter the records who are having certain condition. Then after doing the distinct, it will order by. So it will take those subset of data, and then it will order by. In order by, similar to group by, you can have multiple parameters. You can use multiple columns to order by. You can order by your purchase count, comma, purchase date, descending order, comma, something else. What it will do is, it will take that subset. First of all, it will order by purchase count, descending order, which means the most number of purchases will come on top. Let's say if 3 of us have made 5 purchases, which is the most, then it will, next was our purchase date descending order, which means it will, let's say if I have bought it most recently, my record will come on top, although all of us had similar purchase count. So that's how the order by works. So you can order by multiple columns, rarely used in Marketing Cloud context, but it's a very powerful feature from SQL point of view. That's why I just kept this order here. Any questions for this? Any questions so far? Every day we send out 15 email or SMS campaigns. Okay, what you can probably do is, I'm not sure if Automation Studio topic is already covered for you. There are certain, see, if you're talking about manager, definitely they will not have the access to Marketing Cloud Console, else you could use the normal reports or intelligent reports. But what you can do is using Automation Studio, if you want to schedule these reports, you can schedule it via FTP or something. And then since it is to your manager, what I would recommend is once it is gone to your file server, whatever FTP location, you can build a dashboard out of it. That's the real life example I'm referring to, because see, sending those reports in file server is a good view for a person who is technical. But when you are thinking about sending it to a manager, then it is good to give that visual email kind of visual dashboard kind of representation. And what you can do is maybe drive the dashboards from those Excel templates, because when you automate it, your Excel template is defined, and then you can easily use any of these online available tools like your Looker Studio or your Tableau to build a dashboard on top of it, and maybe schedule it for daily or weekly, or it's a real-time dashboard. So if they want to access it any point of time, they can easily access it. So that could be one real life example how you can solve this problem. Okay, moving ahead, few quick tips. These are just the tips. If you follow, it will make your, as well as the person who will be reading your code or who will be managing your instance, their life easier. Be consistent, follow the naming conventions. Usual practices for any SQL syntax, you should always use uppercase. Like if you may have seen in the query examples which I showed you, my select, from, join, where, group by, any built-in function, all were using uppercase. I was always using uppercase for them. But any of the columns or table names, you should use Pascal case. It's Pascal case or camel case. It's the first character is uppercase, rest all is small case. So which is your, it's kind of your sentence case also. Another good practice is in column names and in table names, you should not use any special characters except maybe underscore. You should never use the space also. Although it won't fail, you can use space, but then what you may need to do is you have to put the square brackets everywhere you want to reference that column, and it becomes less readable. It becomes little dirty. Okay, so that's why naming convention is very important. Be consistent in that naming convention. Way you are formatting your query is very important so that it is more readable. If you write a very big query in just one row, in future when you want to change anything, it is difficult. That's why the alignment and indentation of the queries are very important. You should try to indent nicely. One good thing about SQL Studio query execution fields are, if you format it nicely, it will retain your formatting. It's not that you write it and I forgot, I saw this reference somewhere. where they will actually remove the formatting. It becomes in a single line. Oh, user-defined functions, or user-defined data tables in SQL context. And that was very painful to maintain. So it always used to create so much of trouble. But that is something good about Marketing Cloud Query Studio, where you can actually maintain the syntax or the formatting. As I mentioned earlier, from naming convention, uppercase for all SQL syntax element. Try to opt for meaningful aliases where you are using your table names. So let's say if your table name is too big, subscriber underscore email sent underscore sent, and you are joining with that, then in your join, you will write that join condition, right? And it becomes less readable. So you can actually, in that case, you can use alias. You can put your name as S email sent or sub email sent, so that it is shorter, but it is still readable. So when you are referring that in your where conditions or your select conditions, on join, it will always be readable. But when you're referring the same table name, which is alias on where condition or select condition, that is where it becomes less readable. So it's important that we follow that. Something meaningful. Don't usual practice which I have seen is, if it is subscribers, use S. If it is orders, use O. Try to avoid that. Try to use something which is a little bit more meaningful. It will be helpful to you as well as people who are reading your queries after that. Give alias to columns or data extensions. But it depends. Like, you have to make sure when you are designing your data extension, try to keep the names consistent. Like, whatever you have put in your data extension, your column should have the same name. If it is already following name, you don't need to give alias, but you need to give alias if data extension is following a different name. So let's say if your data extension was having subscriber key, but in your select query, it is subscriber ID or subscriber underscore key, you may need to put it as subscriber key. So that is where this alias come into the picture. I think these are most of it. The most common one or the most useful one is naming convention and formatting. If that is done correctly, it is 90% of the time you will not make mistakes with the query. But basic understanding of joins, where conditions, your inbuilt functions is very important to write any of these queries. Then it could be like really helpful. I think that is most of it, which I wanted to cover for this session. Any questions you guys may have? Oh, nice effect. I didn't put it. I don't know how the effect came.